Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are pleased today to have with us Dr. Mahathir bin Muhammad, the ex-Prime Minister of Malaysia and one of the Muslim leaders that shaped our history, our present and our future. Today, the interview is coming from Putrajaya, Malaysia. Dr. Mahathir, thank you so much. Thank you again for having us and for affording us this opportunity to see you again. Nowadays, the last few days, we had the military drills between China and Russia, which was all over the place, from the Baltic Sea to the Mediterranean Sea to the Indo-Pacific. Do you think are we warming up for a World War III?
Yeah. Where war is normally started by the Europeans. The First World War, the Second World War, and many wars are started by the Europeans. The Asians do go to war, but they don't follow up with colonizing the places that they capture. And with any problem faced by the Europeans, they think of war as a solution. Although they have failed many times, but they still think of war as a solution. And this is seen by the setting up of NATO. Immediately after they defeated Germany, they set up NATO because they had to have an enemy. And the enemy they identified was Russia. And now, of course, China as well. And they are provoking China and Russia so that there is conflict and possibly war. This is our fear because although the Russians dismantled the Warsaw Pact, NATO was not dismantled. In fact, they strengthened NATO by taking in as members the former members of the USSR, the Eastern European countries, again threatening Russia. So when you threaten Russia, of course, Russia's reaction would be to rearm. Although they were very poor at one time, but now they have rearmed, and they also look at the Western European, as their enemy. And to strengthen themselves, they cooperated with China because the Europeans also regarded China as the enemy.
But do you think the Chinese and the Russians could form an alliance, military alliance between themselves with all the language, all the history, all the differences, social differences? Do you think, because the West, they have so many in common, unlike the Russians and the Chinese?
Well, Russia and China have a common enemy, and the common enemy is Western nation, including America. So it is logical that they should work together to face their common enemy. And with the provocation, there may be a war.
When we look at the new Chinese leader and the new direction that the Chinese Communist Party is taking in world stage, China is arming to its teeth, developing fast, especially their marines. Do you think China has really the intention for a military confrontation with the West?
Well, the West is provoking China. One of the things they did was to send the Speaker of the Congress to visit Taiwan, knowing full well that China claims Taiwan as a part of China, but Americans want Taiwan to be independent. But when you send a person like that to Taiwan, you are provoking China. And now, of course, the Chinese have strengthened themselves, showed their military capabilities, And in the face of that, the Americans told Taiwan, you must rearm in case of invasion. And of course, now Taiwan has to rearm and they buy weapons from America. It's good for business.
It's good for business. So now, if we look at it, the West are there is a provocation from the side of the West, but the Chinese also they had this century-long plan by 2049. They will have like 100 years since the setting up of the popular China, the communist China, and they have like key indicators they want to get to. Do you think the West will succeed in its provocation so China will stop short from achieving its goals before 2049 they go to war?
Well, it looks as if China is going to grow and develop and become the number one nation in the world. And this is something that America doesn't like. So America would try to prevent China from being more powerful. And the way America wants to do it is, of course, to confront with China and also to apply sanctions against China. And when you apply sanctions against China, of course, the Chinese want to defend themselves, want to take action to nullify the sanction, and the Chinese want to build, want to have sources for their huge population. The population of China is more than the European and the Americans combined. So they have to feed their people. They have to get raw materials, oil, for example, and things like iron ore, aluminium. This they have to get from other countries. So they want to establish links with other countries for their sources. But to do that under Xi Jinping, he proposed the formation of the Belt and Road
Initiative.
policy.
Yeah.
It is basically in order for the Chinese to establish communication with many other countries, African countries included. So this means that the Chinese are doing what the Europeans did before. The Europeans before conquered the whole world, but the Chinese also want to have the resources of the world for themselves. So there is a conflict there.
If we look at the growth of, since we are talking about the Chinese and the growth of China, do you think we are moving towards a world where China is the hegemony, the dominant power worldwide?
Well, China so far has not invaded or colonized any part, excepting they have problem with Tibet, for example, but they consider Tibet as part of China. But they need to have sources of supply. The European strategy has always been to deny materials to the countries they consider competing with them. For example, for the Second World War, what they did was to deny Japan oil. And of course, as a result, Japan wants to get to the oil fields of Southeast Asia. And there was a war. But if you keep on trying to block China from accessing sources of raw material, China may take action which may lead to war.
Well, China now, they have the so-called nine dash lines with its neighbors and South China Sea. Isn't it like another imperialist?
We don't recognize it. They can put a claim, but we don't recognize it. But so far, China has not stopped passage of ships passing through the South China Sea. They didn't stop to examine or to block, and even American warships can pass through. But China has been telling the countries of Southeast Asia that the sea belongs to them, and therefore Southeast Asian countries cannot exploit the wealth of the South China Sea. China's claim is only made since Xi Jinping became the president. Before that, there was no such claim. These nine dots or whatever they call it, that is China's claim. We have our claim, which overlaps the Chinese claim. We don't recognize their claim. They don't recognize our claim. But so far, there have been some mild confrontation, like China telling Malaysia not to explore for oil in the South China Sea. But I think the government does not recognize China's authority over the South China Sea.
Going back to Russia, Russia is a very large, very vast country, and clearly the West. When I hear the leaders of the West talking, Russia must be defeated. Russia must be defeated. Macron of France said he's willing even to send army there. It looks like that in a conventional war, Russia doesn't stand a chance to defeat the West coming from all corners of its borders. Do you think there is a big risk of nuclear war?
Well, if you pressure Russia, Russia may resort to nuclear weapons, and that will result in the West also employing nuclear weapons, and we will have a nuclear war. A nuclear war between Russia and the West would mean the whole world will be destroyed, because the effect of the explosion of the nuclear weapon is not confined to one place. The radiation goes around the world. So if they have keep on using nuclear weapons to destroy different cities, it will affect the whole world. And it is an American writer estimates that some 1 billion people would die.
SubhanAllah. Moving on now from the international wars to more localized one, the genocide in Palestine is going on and on and on now. We are coming to nearly a year now. So this is the 12th month since the genocide, the proper genocide started. And in the other hand, we see the unwavering Western support and backing of the state of Israel. It is a state driven by the Zionist ideology. Do you think the Zionist ideology has a future in the world, especially in the wake of youngsters, universities waking up to the fact that this ideology is really an evil ideology?
America is the main culprit, as far as I'm concerned, as to why the Israelis are carrying out genocide in Gaza. Without American support, I don't think Israelis by themselves can do all these things, because people fear America. If you go and take action against Israel, America will take action against you.
So that's, as you can see, we are 1.5 to 2 billion Muslims watching a small place being slaughtered day and night. And this is the disunity among Muslims. the the question I have for you, in back, I think in the 60s, and correct me if I'm wrong because you've been part of it, there was an idea floating around of a pan-Muslim economic area or economic market. We didn't see anything coming to fruition. Do you think is there any hope? Is there any steps? Is there any hope that some Muslim countries they will come together and form a power?
We call ourselves Muslims, but we don't really adhere to the teachings of Islam as found in the Quran, not the teachings by leaders, imams, and ulamas and all that. But the Quran is the main source of information on Islam. And the Quran tells us that we should be brothers, but we are not. The Quran tells us you should not kill, we kill. The Quran tells us to do all the right things. We don't do all those things. That is why we are split. You are Shia, you are Sunni, you are Wahhabi, and we break ourselves up into units, the small mazhab and all that, and we cannot work together because our interpretation differs to the extent that some leaders say that those other Muslims are not really Muslim because they don't follow our interpretation. And the other Muslims also say the same thing. So we are divided and therefore we become weak. And yet today, the Muslim countries are the richest countries in the world, but they don't even know how to manage their wealth. If they come together with 1.4 billion Muslim, we will be a force in the world affairs. But there is not a single Muslim country which can be called developed. That is why we become dependent upon the West and we have to adhere to Western politics.
My last question, mashallah, may Allah give you long life and health. If we look, we are 2024, we are like 25 years plus away from 2050. What would be your predictions based on your long experience? By 2050, what are your predictions?
Well, we should be a power in this world because we are 1.4 billion people. We are wealthy, or at least some of us are very wealthy. But, you know, the Islamic teaching is that you help the poor, sedekah. You see, but you keep the money in America. You buy dollar bonds. Buying dollar bonds means you are lending money to America. And the money is used by the Americans to produce weapons to kill you. That is what is happening. So we are not very smart in using our wealth or in using the unity of Islam to give us strength. I feel that there should be at least one Muslim country which can be considered as developed. Unfortunately, we are concerned about interpretations of religion, but we are not focused on the development of technology and making advances in science which can contribute to our ability to do things for ourselves.
What about the rest of the world politics?
World politics today is...
no, in the future. I want 2050.
In the future, it will stay as it is now. The Europeans want to divide the world into two. There must be an enemy at any time. In fact, they said after Russia collapsed, they said the next enemy are the Muslim religious confrontation. They are forever looking for enemies and preparing for war. And it's not healthy.
To Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, thank you so much for affording us again this opportunity. May Allah give you long life and very good health. Thank you so much.
Thank you.